then welcome to Core Restore the Masterclass. Let's go ahead and get started. Again, I'm Jamie. Most of you already know me that are here live, but if you're going to be watching this later, hi, I'm Jamie. I'm a pelvic floor and core specialist. And today we're going to be going over a few things. You're going to learn about the muscles of the core and pelvic floor. You're going to learn why your breath pattern matters. You're going to learn about core and pelvic floor influences on your whole body. If you happen to know anybody who's prenatal or postpartum, this is going to be really great information for them as well. Also, I can walk you through a little bit of a diastasis recti assessment that you can do on yourself. I'm also going to talk to you about my philosophy of TAP, the 3E rule, and also my ABCD principles in Core Restore. So all of those things we're going to go through really fast, and I talk fast, so definitely write down questions and things that you might have for me. We can do some question and answer at the end. You can also email me at hello@jamiehaynes.com, any email questions if you prefer to email me instead of asking them here live, okay? So let's get started. So here I am. There's Jamie. Actually at Lake Frederick is where this particular little photo shoot happened. I'm a pelvic floor specialist. I am a nationally certified Pilates teacher, a 300-hour registered yoga teacher, but also a continuing education provider. And I am a prenatal postpartum care specialist, you name it. I live here in the Shenandoah Valley. I have a spruedel named Cooper, 2 cats. We've already met them a little bit. And I live here with my love of my life. My children are all in college, so this is my daughter's bedroom. There you go. Okay. All right. So what we're going to go over today is a couple of things, right? So how do we educate in the sense for yourself, become your own best advocate? That's what I'm most concerned about usually, is how do I help people educate themselves in a way that they can advocate for themselves? And what I mean by that is if I fell off the face of the earth tomorrow, would you know when you go into your classes the best way to advocate for yourself so that you are doing what's best for your body, okay? So we're going to talk about if you've ever felt hindered by a weak core or persistent back pain. So you want to think about getting the secrets, right? It sounds so dramatic, unlock the secrets, but really, how do you revitalize your core? How will this transformation enhance your daily life? Then also to equip you with knowing things like, are leaks and discomfort impacting your confidence and your vitality? And can you master pelvic floor techniques and bid the leaks goodbye so that you can do what you want with confidence, right? Like, do you want to be able to go do the things that you want to do and not worry about those leaks? And then that takes us into empowerment, right? To be empowered so that you are no longer lacking confidence, that you can do what you want with fitness, with recreation, with that joy and vitality, and you can be a powerhouse that is in control of your core and pelvic floor health. Now let's move on. So as a review, the core 4, and if you're in my classes, you know that I talk about these muscles often. So we want to talk about the diaphragm of the core, also the transverse abdominis, which is that corset-like muscle, the multifidi, which goes up the spine, and then the muscles of the pelvic floor. And all of those things are super important for your core and pelvic floor strength because we want the diaphragm to be able to regulate the pressure of the air in and out of the core. The transverse abdominis is your deepest core muscle. The muscles of the pelvic floor also are in relationship to the diaphragm. And then, of course, the spine needs to be flexible. Joseph Pilates used to say that you are as young as your spine is flexible. And if your spine is inflexible, that is what ages you. Now, we're going to talk a little bit more about things like what is the cost of not developing your core and pelvic floor strength, right? What are the states of discomfort that you might be experiencing? What is the unease that you might have from day to day? Because those are the things that we really have to take into account. I am part of a lot of support groups online, and I'm in there to help people answer questions that they might have. And a lot of these people in these groups, all of these people are in there to discuss what their symptoms are, to discuss what quality of life is affected for them. And it's, for me, has been eye-opening in the past year to be a part of these groups, to hear what folks are sharing on a very vulnerable level about how their impact their quality of life is impacted, which has just spurred me on to be even more passionate about what I do, because a lot of this pain and discomfort, and quite frankly, some of these things are so profound for them that they feel stuck in their bed. They feel completely inactive or trapped in their body. It's affecting their relationships. It's affecting their own mental health and esteem. And so I want to help bring light and awareness to all of these issues, because a lot of these things can be first prevented. And even if you've already experiencing some symptoms, we can alleviate many of them to help bring back that vitality of life. Okay. So that's why I'm trusting most of you are here tonight. Like, you want to have a different way. You want to be able to do the things you want to do. You want to be able to experience fitness and recreational pursuits and just day-to-day life in a way that feels at ease in your body. Okay. So moving on. Moving on up. There's your song, Evelyn. No, I was kidding. No. So the core essentials, I feel like I should pop quiz my class right now, my usual folks, about what are those core essentials. So we talk a lot about the diaphragm. It is the king of the core because it regulates the air pressure in and out of the body. It's this big dome that acts like this funnel, if you will, or large trampoline. I like to think of it like the parachute you used to do in gym class, where you would float it up and then float it down. So it likes to gather up the oxygen and then it likes to toss out the carbon dioxide. We also have the spinal muscles. So the multifidi aren't alone. There's also the erectors and the paraspinals. We have the abs. So we already talked about the transverse abdominis, but we also have the rectus abdominis and the obliques. Now, those are more superficial muscles, and a lot of people like to work those muscles because they look good when they're nice and toned. But when it comes to functionality, transverse is still the key player. We also have the pelvic floor muscles. There's a whole family of those. We're going to see more about those later. And then also we want to talk about our glutes. So I have something called the Great Glute Challenge on YouTube, because people who tend to lose mass in their glutes are losing some of their alignment of their hips, which affects not only the lower core especially, but the pelvic floor function as well. Moving on. So now we are going to talk about training the weakest link. And for some of you who have already been hanging out with me in these workshops, you've seen this before, but a review is great, because breathing and learning to breathe well is a practice. If we've spent a lifetime with our tails tucked under at our computer desks or in our cars, we tend to start to breathe in a different way, and it causes stress on our body. And so a lot of what I do is teaching people to breathe well again. And I say well again because you came into this world breathing well, and your body knows how to breathe well. It's all the stuff that we layer on top of it. Poor posture through the years, sitting in over cushy chairs, tails tucked under, driving a lot, not using all of the muscles in different ways because we're not as active throughout our day, all day long, as our ancestors before us. So we tend to get into this breath pattern that's a little tight and stuck in the lower core and a lot of pressure in the upper, so around the rib cage. So when you want to think about how the pelvic floor is working and the core is working, it really is a simultaneous dance between all of them. You want to be able to inhale into the back. You want to be able to inhale into the side ribs. And you want to feel on the inhale that your pelvic floor is gently lowering down. As you exhale, you actually want to feel the gentle lift of the pelvic floor up. And notice on the diagram that the exhale is not at the belly button with that arrow in the front of the body. It's actually from right above the pubic bone and lifting. So if you've worked with me before, you've probably heard the cue. I want you to pretend like you have a winter coat on and you're getting ready to zip it up from the pubic bone up. And that's essentially what we're thinking about when we exhale, is to get that corset to come in and hug the spine. And on the inhale, we can expand and create some space in the core for the breath to come in. And I love, actually, shout out to all of my Australian friends. The Continence Foundation of Australia has been some of the leading researchers in this particular field for the past decade or more. So props to them. We love our Australian sisters and brothers over there who are helping lead the way on this research. All right, so going a little bit more into the inhale and the exhale, you want to think about how that diaphragm descends down. So if you can see that diaphragm over there on the left with the inhale, how it actually starts kind of up in the rib cage, and we want it to be able to lower. So see where the dotted line goes, that dome will drop. Going back to that parachute, that's like the parachute that comes down and gathers up all of those plastic balls in gym class. And that's the inhale that it's gathering up. On the right, you see the dotted line goes back up to its home place, its original setting, and that's where like the parachute's going up and getting rid of all the carbon dioxide. Now that goes even further into the core. So when you inhale and the diaphragm goes down, the abdominals will expand out a little bit, but I like to think about the whole waist expanding. It's not just the belly button. And the pelvic floor should also be able to relax down. So wherever you are right now, if you're sitting, you might be able to feel that change if you think about inhale, relaxing the soft tissues that you're sitting on. And as you exhale and that zipper starts to zip up from the pubic bone, you might feel the pelvic floor start to gently lift as the abdominals come back in. It creates the suction, basically pulling the carbon dioxide up and out of your body. So that is the basics of a breath. I use a lot of tools and a lot of different cues to help people find that breath. So if it feels a little stuck for you right now, it doesn't have to stay stuck. We can work on that for sure, okay? So let's keep moving on. If you have any questions too, drop them in the chat. And for goodness sake, if I don't see them, Gail will let me know, okay? Hopefully, Gail will let me know. All right, so moving on. So why should you care, right? I have a lot of people who come in and they don't even know what most of their like 4 core muscles are, or even where their superficial core muscles are, and they mostly don't know where their pelvic floor is. So you should care about these particular groups of muscles because they do support your pelvis, they do support your lower back, and they also keep your pelvic organs up and in. So think bladder and bowels. If you've ever had hip pain, if you've ever had lower back pain, yes and yes, then you should care about these particular groups of muscles. They build you a strong foundation from the inside out. This goes back to Pilates as well in the sense of, and I use more tools than Pilates and Core Restore and with my clients. I use all of the tools in my toolbox with Pilates, yoga, kinesiology, strength training, you name it. But Pilates used to say that every movement you make comes from the inside out. Everything comes from the core. And now we know from scientific data and research that that's in fact true. You go to reach for something across your desk, your core is engaging whether you think about it or not. Is it engaging well? Well, that's another question, but it is engaging. So when you go into things like lifting, sprinting, jumping, sneezing, laughing, you want to be able to do these things with confidence and stability. And there is a way to do that, especially if right now you're struggling, you're thinking, I can't do that, I can't do that, I can't do that, and I can't do that. There is a way for the body to have healing in a way that you could do most of those things again. Now, pelvic floor muscles, we want to talk about those specifically because if you think about like the old analogy of building your house on a rock, not sand, pelvic floor is the bed of rock, okay, that cornerstone. So prenatal considerations really quickly. I'm pretty sure everyone in the audience so far right now is probably not interested in making any babies anytime soon, but you may know somebody who is, right? We all have other generations in our life. And so these are the considerations that you want to think about if you know somebody. You want to talk to those people who are expecting or planning on having a baby soon, because these factors can really change their outcome. You don't have to shake your head yes. You don't have to tell me anything, but you probably, if you think back to your birth experience, having babies, if you had babies, you might have had maybe stitches. You might have had the need for a vacuum or for a C-section, all of those things that happen at birth. But some of those things actually happen prenatally, if you will. So while the woman is pregnant, there are things that we can do so that the birth experience is a little more fluid for them, okay? I used to work with a lot of gymnasts, cheerleaders, runners, They tend to be too tight in the pelvic floor. And so if we can get that pelvic floor pliable and working the way it should, their deliveries went much better, whether that was the first child, second child, third child, and some of that is in the testimonies here at the end, the testimonials. But they have these considerations of relaxin, the hormonal change, weight load, hyperspastic or hypotonic, birth traumas, and then also needing to know what their baseline is. What is their daily activity? What is their body range of motion already? Some of these things also apply to us when we're not prenatal. So if you've ever heard the words perimenopause, menopause, postmenopause, we also have to deal with hormonal changes, potential weight load. We have hyperspastic and hypertonic floors ourselves, or hypo, and we also might have other, let's say, abdominal traumas, in the sense of we've had some type of abdominal surgery or some type of hip surgery, and those things will also affect our function of our core and pelvic floor. So postpartum recovery, just to go back to the pregnant ladies for a moment, it does begin in pregnancy, it does transfer to postpartum, and from day one, we can start reconnecting the core and pelvic floor through simple breathing exercises. This also applies for people who've had hernia surgery or an appendectomy or a prostate surgery or something of that nature, hysterectomy. We start right away with day one of reconnecting core to pelvic floor with the breath and regaining our function. And this can happen even years later. So if you had a hysterectomy 10 years ago, we should still talk, because I probably can help you relieve some of those symptoms. All right, moving on. So diastasis recti, do we love it? That is a gap in the abdominal wall. Okay, now gap is a loose term. Technically, it's just an overstretching of the linea alba, which is the fascia that runs in the midline of the abdomen. And as that fascia stretches, it creates this sense of a gap. And we're looking at this from several different perspectives. First of all, it's extremely common. 66% of third trimester women have diastasis recti. 50% of postpartum women definitely have diastasis recti. Now, some people it closes right back up, and other people it stays a little loose a little bit longer. And there's lots of factors: genetics, nutrition, hydration, birth, right? Like, was this a 5-foot lady with a 10-pound baby? This is all affected, okay? Now, if we catch this soon, like for a postpartum woman, or right after, say, a surgery like a hysterectomy, about 8 weeks can be a good healing time. If we don't catch it right away, it could take longer. I tell folks to give me up to a year to work with them until they decide to have surgery, say to close the gap, which is possible. You can also look at gap and tension. So the distance between the abdominal wall and the tension of the linea alba are very important. And then sometimes people ask me about binding or wrapping for diastasis. And I like to usually say, refrain from it if you can. It's like a cast. You want to retrain the muscles to work the way they're supposed to work. So if you do need to use some binding or wrapping, I actually recommend the shorts more than just the mid-abdominal bind. And that's for even any type of surgery, not just postpartum, because the midsection bind tends to put too much pressure into the rib cage and also into the pelvic floor. So the shorts with the lower abdominal bind are usually better for you long term. All right, so assessing the linea alba, you can work along with this right now if you want to. You can hop on the floor and lie down and assess your linea alba if you'd like. But here are the steps for it. So you would lie down on your back for a self-assessment. You want to check halfway between the sternum, which is the breastbone, and the belly button. And I like to do this with 3 fingers, like so. And when you go to assess, instead of going down the length of your body with the skinny, you want to turn the fingers so that you're going down the midline of the body with the width. And you can start to measure that linea alba. Now, you want to do this at a baseline first. So head and shoulders down, just poking from the sternum to the belly button. And then you would check above and below the belly button, and then halfway between the pubic bone and the belly button. And you can actually go all the way down to the pubic bone if you like. Then you would change it so that your knees are bent and your feet are on the floor and your head stays on the floor. Then you can do the same exact thing with your head slightly raised. I like to do an inhale down and an exhale up. And then you would measure the finger width and tension. And that's important because a lot of people still are only measuring for the gap, the space. But we want to assess the tension. So if you touch your cheek, that should be like the baseline of your linea alba, or maybe a little bit more like the nose. But when you lift your head and shoulders or tighten your abdominal wall, you definitely want to feel more of the nose tension. If you're still feeling kind of cheeky there in the midline of your abdomen, the linea alba is asking for help, okay? And so we can try to create more tension in that fascia with certain types of exercise prescription and also some nutrition and supplementation to get that connective tissue to refire and find its elasticity again. Moving on, plank test. So you can raise your hand if anybody's ever done a plank for more than 10 seconds. Everybody, right? Yes. So the plank test is really important because number one, we don't always just do lying on your back exercises for abdominals. You're on your hands and knees a lot, or maybe in a plank. Someone who's assessing you for a diastasis recti should also be assessing you in a plank position. We know that 50% of people that do a plank actually have that gap close and that tension reignite the way it should, which is great. That's going to help you heal your diastasis. For the other 50% of people, for some reason, it doesn't. It actually creates more pressure and more load into their linea alba. The rectus abdominis muscles stay apart and they feel like their insides are kind of falling out. That is not what we want, and that does not heal the diastasis. So those people would need to come back away from a plank or change it, like doing a plank against the wall or a higher surface before going to the floor to give that abdominal wall a chance to heal, the linea alba to reconnect in that tension, and then they can go to a plank. Now, the 10-second part is for your pelvic floor specifically, because the pelvic floor does not usually like to hold a plank longer than 10 seconds. Even if you don't have diastasis recti, they've done the research where don't ask, have found out that the pelvic floor taps out after about 10 seconds. It doesn't really love it. So I really like people to do a 10-second plank, come down, take a breath in, recalibrate their air pressure, and then go back into the plank. So hopefully that makes sense. And that's one of those things I like to teach people in Core Restore, because if you're in a fitness class, you're an exercise group, whatever, and they're asking you to do a 1-minute plank, and especially if you know you have an abdominal gap or you have pelvic floor dysfunction, you're going to want to advocate for yourself. And you don't have to make a big deal about it. You can just say, I do 10-second planks, or just do the repetition. The fitness instructor may not even ask anything about it. And in that case, you just do what you need to do for your body, okay? All right, under pressure. So we talked about this a little bit with the pregnancy slide, but here it is again for those of us who are not prenatal. And that means hormones change our connective tissue, change our muscular structure, change our body composition. And so what starts to happen with that? We lose muscle, we start to gain more fat composition in our body becomes under more pressure in the core and pelvic floor. So those are some factors we want to consider when we are assessing core strength and pelvic floor function. So hormones, weight gain, and as I said before, the traumas or surgeries. So have you had car accidents that affected your low back, your hips, your abdominals, surgeries, etc.? All of those things need to be accounted for. All right, so what does the pelvic floor do? We've got the 4 Bs: bladder, bowels, breath, birth. So the pelvic floor controls your urinary flow with the bladder. It stops leaks. You can develop interstitial cystitis, which is very, very uncomfortable for urination. It can happen to women, but it tends to happen more to men, or it's more uncomfortable for men. And then we also have the bladder prolapse cytocele. So that's where the bladder starts to fall down into or collapse into the pelvic floor, creating a bulge, and can even invert into the vaginal canal. The bowels are controlled by the pelvic floor. In the rear of the pelvic floor controls your bowel movements and controls your gas. It also can create, if it's not functioning well, you can leak, like have bowel incidents, especially during things like lifting. because the body's under more pressure. And then rectocele is where the bowels come into the pelvic floor. And those first two tend to happen with people who've had hysterectomies. So for instance, I've done my own homework for all these years because I had a hysterectomy in 2016. And so I have to be mindful of the fact that my body may want to have a bladder or bowel prolapse if I don't do the work in that sense, because it's not an empty space that just becomes this empty bubble. Unfortunately, that's literally what my surgeon said to me when I asked him about having a hysterectomy. He was like, just think of it like less pressure on your pelvic floor because we're taking away your oversized uterus. Well, it doesn't stay an empty bubble. Things come down into it. So that is something that you want to keep in mind, and we can alleviate some of that pressure and do different things so that you are creating strength to support the organs that may want to fill the space where the uterus once was. And then breath. So our endurance, our breath control, and really our endurance of the body, right? Our breath controls so much in our body. It controls a lot of the stimulation of the vagus nerve. The breath can help move the lymphatic nodes. The breath helps regulate our heart rate variability. Our breath rate affects whether or not we're in parasympathetic or sympathetic nervous system. And so knowing that the pelvic floor helps regulate that pressure and keep our breath in a nice fluid place is really important to our overall health. It's also postural support. So if you feel like your pelvic floor is failing you, you are probably going to adjust your pelvis or your posture in some way. Your pelvis and the tailbone, the sacrum, whole hip girdle is the rudder of the entire posture. So if the tailbone is getting pulled forward by a tight pelvic floor, if your sits bones are spreading because of a loose pelvic floor, that is going to translate into hip discomfort or lower back pain. And now I would like to pause for a moment and say, just because you have lower back pain does not mean that you always 100% have pelvic floor issues, but if you have pelvic floor issues, it can translate into lower back pain, okay? So the two aren't always related, but there is a strong enough relation that we want to at least consider it. All right. It also regulates air pressure, this lovely little pelvic floor. And also, if your pelvic floor is not functioning well, the breath is going to look for a way to relieve the air pressure. So if the pelvic floor isn't regulating air pressure as it should, then hernias can start to pop up because the breath is going to find that weakest spot or that space in your fascia where it can pop and relieve some pressure into a bubble so that it comes off of the abdominal and the deep core. Then we have, of course, birth function. So you have your sexual function. Do you have loss of sensation or pain during intercourse, erectile dysfunction, all of those things. So failure to perform or pain, and then of course the birth process itself and the strength to get you through the birth process and then have that elasticity to heal from the birth process. All right, so quick picture of the pelvic floor. Again, Continence Foundation of Australia, we love you. Male and female, you can see that they are similar in the fact that they connect from pubic bone to the tailbone, the coccyx, but there are obviously different shapes. So the female pelvic floor is actually much wider in its trampoline because it has to allow for the bladder, the uterus, and the bowel to come through the pelvic floor, while the men just have the bladder and the bowel coming through their pelvic floor. And then here's the color-coded muscle chart that I love so much because it shows you the different families of muscle, if you will, in the pelvic floor. So the big green teal-like muscle here in the center of both pelvic floors around the anus, that is the big levator ani. It acts kind of like a big funneled trampoline. And then you can see here where we've got these smaller muscles. These connect up into deep core and hip flexors. These purple muscles, all of that shared space with the tailbone. Same thing here for my gentleman. And then also you can see how much the pelvic floor here in the front for both affect the pubic bone area. This is where erectile dysfunction would come in for men because they've got all of these muscles here that, if they are not calibrated well, can restrict blood flow. Same thing here when we deal with loss of sensation or pain. We have to deal with all of that muscle and fascia connection. So pelvic health screening, if you haven't taken one already, I do offer this on my website. It's jamiehaynes.com/pelvic-health-screening, and you can take the screening there. It takes about 5 to 10 minutes, depending on how much you want to think about the answer to a question, but most of it is pretty short and sweet. You get an email with your responses and a link to book a consultation with me if you'd like to go over your responses in more detail. Also, if I go over it and I see a lot of red flags, things that the body is asking for help, I may reach out to you as well and say, hey, it's probably really in your best interest to book a consultation. But usually once you hear the questions or see the questions I'm asking, it really makes you think, because maybe you didn't actually connect those dots before or think that that thing was connected to this thing. So usually once people go through the screening, they're just booking consultations with me anyway, because they're very curious about why I asked that question, or they realize, that might be my body trying to tell me something. All right, so come together. We have the Kegels, which are not effective when traditionally prescribed. If you were in my pelvic floor dysfunction workshop earlier, I went into length and detail about how Kegels are used, the different types of Kegels, who they're for, which, by the way, is for hypotonic pelvic floors usually. Our hyperspastic and hypertonic pelvic floors, we actually don't really love these for you. And there's a whole reason why, which I go into depth about in Core Restore 2.0, because you have phase 6, which is all about pelvic floor anatomy, and phase 7, which is all about pelvic floor dysfunction and prolapse. So I go into those in a deep dive and answer lots of questions there. But it goes back to, just in general, the pelvic floor muscle is not designed, or you saw the pelvic floor muscles, I should say, those family of muscles are not designed for all or nothing recruitment. I mean, if we go back and look at this for just a second, you can see where if I just told you to do a Kegel, really all you would be pulling up on for the ladies would be kind of right around the vaginal opening, okay? But really we want to think about this perineum or perineum right here. Whoops, hello. And you can pull, like, can you pull from tailbone into center, pubic bone into center, both sits bones, these are your sits bones, into center? Can you pull just more in this area? Can you pull just here? Can you pull just around the sphincter, leave the front alone? There's a lot of different exercises we would do to get your pelvic floor balanced. Same for the gentleman. All right, so tight pelvic floors does not equal healthy or restored pelvic floors. So sometimes we hear that out there in the world, and tight does not mean excellent. We want a muscle, the muscles, I should say, want to be able to move through their full range of motion. So a muscle that's only able to move in a certain range of motion is not necessarily a happy muscle. In fact, tight muscles are usually unstable muscles because the body wants stability before it wants mobility. It always wants to make sure that you're safe first and foremost. So when people say, I have really tight hip flexors, I need to stretch them more and more. Actually, you probably need to strengthen them and also observe what's happening around them, because there might be muscles that those hip flexors are connected to and sharing real estate with that need more strength, so that the hip flexor can open up and relax a little bit on its own. But it's not going to give you stretch, and it's not going to give you more mobility, and you can stretch those hip flexors all you want. If they're not strong and stable, they're not going to give you the space you're looking for. And that applies to any muscle in the body. So going back to pelvic floor, hypertonic, too much tone, hypotonic, too loose. And some people have both simultaneously. So if you think about those pelvic floor muscles again on that diagram, some people might be too tight around the rear of the pelvic floor. Some people might be too loose in the front. You could be actually the opposite, too tight in the front, too loose in the back. And just to go back for just a second, so ladies who say leak urine but are constipated, they would maybe be too loose in the front, but super tight in the back. Men who say have erectile dysfunction could be super tight in the front, but they might be very loose in the back, right? Really loose bowels, loss of gas control. So you can see where they actually can be both at the same time. Moving on. So how do we restore function? I'm going to go ahead and tell you right now, trying to answer this in one slide with 3 little boxes was blowing my mind a little bit, because if you know me, I like to deep dive. I like to give you big answers, and I don't do well at making 30-second videos. So there's that. But restoring function can come down to my 3 basic things, and that is alignment, breath, and control. If you can align in an exercise well, and you can breathe in an exercise well, then you are controlling that exercise well. If you are not aligning and you're not breathing, you're not controlling anything. And that could just even be while you're driving. I had someone today tell me, I literally hold my breath the whole time I'm driving. Well, then I'm pretty sure you're under pelvic floor pressure the whole time you're driving, right? So those are things we have to consider. Are you aligning? Are you breathing? Then you're controlling the air pressure of your body. Some of the alignment techniques that I teach in Core Restore 2.0 are about the neutral spine. And the neutral spine looks different on different bodies. I do not like cookie cutters, and that's why Core Restore 2.0 is more extensive than Core Restore, because there are no cookie cutter answers. And as the years progress and more scientific data comes out, we know that what looks like a neutral spine on one person is not necessarily going to look exactly the same on the other person. There are different sizes of pelvic girdles on the human body, 4 to be exact. And then there's different types of acetabulums where the leg bone goes into the hip socket, 4 in fact. So you have any combination of those 4 hips and those 4 leg bones. You also have the same thing in the curves of the spine. So we have to assess, like, is there scoliosis? Is there lordosis? Is there kyphosis? Is it really kyphosis, or is it just the forward rounding of the shoulder? And these are things that I help you determine on your own body in these courses, so that you are better equipped to know if you're really in neutral. You might have a trainer who's like, be in neutral, and they're trying to force your particular spine into something that isn't actually your neutral. There's also neutral pelvis. That one's a little bit easier to determine on yourself, especially because if you think of where your front hip bones are and your pubic bone, if you can line those things up, that's neutral pelvis. If your pubic bone's coming closer to your belly button, that's flexion, and that goes into flexion of the spine as well. And if your pubic bone's traveling away from your belly button, that takes you into another tilt of the pelvis anterior, and that can take you into different spinal curves as well. So a lot of times when I'm looking at spinal curves, I'm actually looking at people's pelvises to see if that is where the problem actually is. So that takes us to TAP, which is that thoracic, abdominal, and pelvic cavity. And I help people line those things up. And when I say line them up, it doesn't mean you're a rigid soldier. It just means, how does your rib cage affect your pelvis and vice versa? And the core is just trying to keep peace between those two. It's like the Switzerland of the body. So it's trying to keep those ribs in alignment, help the ribs come into their nice infrasternal angle, help the shoulders relax out of the ears, take the tension off the neck. And then likewise with the pelvis, how is it being affected by the movement of the leg? Can you incorporate the deep lower core? Are your inner thighs strong? How are your external hip rotators? All of those things we start to look at. Now, when we're breathing, we want to repattern the breath. So there's an inhale to inflate, exhale to engage. And even that's kind of cookie cutter. I hate to say it, because if you have different types of pelvic floor, like hyperspastic, hypotonic, we say exhale, engage, and that means exhale, pull the core in towards the spine, inhale, inflate. That is pretty much standard. But when I say exhale, engage, you might be thinking, well, then she means I always exhale to stand out of a squat. That's not always the case. If you have prolapse, we actually know that the reverse breath is better for you. If you have a hyperspastic floor, we actually want you to exhale on the way down out of the bridge, not on the way up. So those things all come into play in Core Restore 2.0. I teach you about all of those things in depth. And then dilateral breath. Okay, I might have made this word up a little bit. Actually, no, there's at least 3 other teachers that use it. But what does that mean? You hear about lateral breath, which means go out into the rib cage, but it also means use the diaphragm, because some people with the lateral breath push all of their air into their belly, and that is not what we want. We want you to breathe into the entire core. So think about an umbrella opening under your rib cage and taking a nice deep breath in. That's a good dilateral breath, to breathe into the full circumference of the ribs at the bottom, and then exhale, let those ribs come back in, just like an umbrella. And then control. So A plus B equals C, align plus breath equals control. That's core control and load control. Because just because you can control something in a body weight and then we add 50 pounds, 100 pounds, the load control changes the pressure on the pelvic floor. Now, that doesn't mean you can't ever do weights. And in fact, that's not what I'm saying. People should probably be lifting a lot more weight than they are. But can you progress it wisely so that you are always, first and foremost, in alignment with good breath control, which means pressure control, so that you can then get in more and more load control. So there's that. And plus, by the way, on this little slide, I don't include D, but D is in Core Restore. And D means decompression, because we are overworked, overstressed, overscheduled, and not breathing well, and hold a lot of tension in our bodies, whether that's past tension or present tension. And so I also teach the principles of decompression. I get you into some special poses or shapes, lots of nest building so that your body's fully supported with blankets and bolsters and whatnot, and your body can relax. And those tight spots that do need some stretch and space can do so in a way where they're not hanging on to space. I loathe seeing child's poses where people are just kind of hanging out in space. Put bolsters under you, put blankets under your thighs, make all of that empty space disappear so that you're supported and your body can give way to gravity. And now that tight fascia can let go and breathe. And that's so good. So D is for decompression, but I also like to say that D is for dessert or D is for delicious. And those are the best parts of Core Restore. And no, my Pilates class, you're not getting decompression. So don't even think about it. I only have 40 minutes in that class. All right, so 3E rule, expand, exhale, exert. That is usually where we inhale, expand, exhale, we compress into that spine a little bit, and we exert with the exhale. Now, we also know about the new research on the squat. I've already shared that with you, but just as a reminder, typically we've taught inhale on the way down, exhale to stand. We know now that for prolapse, especially prolapse 1 and 2, stage 1 and 2, we can actually reverse those stages with the good reverse breath. So that would be the inhale at the top and the exhale to lower into the squat, inhale to stand. And it has been shown very beneficial so far. All right, so flags to watch for if you have, say, diastasis recti. But remember, diastasis recti will translate into pelvic floor issues. So you want to watch the flags. The body whispers before it screams. We have crunches. They can actually help a diastasis heal up, but they have to be done with good alignment and good breath. And 9.5 times out of 10, when I see them in participants in classes, they are not always with good alignment or good breath. So I teach you how to break it down into steps so that you learn the foundational steps first and then can start to progress and grow with those crunches so that we can close. In Pilates, we call it chest lift or ab prep. So it's not a crunch, it's a lengthening and lifting with the spine. Then jackknives. are horrible for diastasis and pelvic floor dysfunction, and yet I see them happening all the time in core challenges because people think they work really well. They look big and fancy, but they're not very effective. Roll-ups. Listen, we do them in Pilates all the time, but I also see people struggle with them. So there's always a modification, or skip it altogether, because if you can't lie all the way down and roll all the way up, your body's saying just not today. And there are different ways to progress. And I teach you those things in Core Restore 2.0. And then twisting, you have to be very careful. It's like buttoning your shirt in the dark and you get the buttons misaligned. We just need to make sure that you're twisting nice and clean in a good way so that as you twist, we're not essentially pulling into that fascia and misaligning it and causing tension and torque. And quite frankly, those little bubbles that are not necessarily hernias, but certainly can feel and look like one. All right, going forward, planks, push-ups, deadlifts, and running. All of those things put pressure on the front of the pelvic floor. Now, again, planks, if you're breathing well and you're aligning well, and the diastasis, if you have one, is okay with it, you can do planks. But just know that you're putting more and more pressure on the front of the pelvic floor. So if that's an issue for you, you want to keep that in mind. Push-ups is a plank in motion. And then deadlifts. Deadlifts are actually one of my favorite exercises. They're amazing for you if you know how to do them well. But they do put pressure on the front of the pelvic floor, and we have to be aware of that. So where is your alignment and where is your breath? And usually I find that if people are not aligning well, they bend into the back, they go into a flexion of the lower spine to deadlift, which is not a deadlift, their pelvic floor is really going to pay the price. Also, same thing, if they're not breathing well in a deadlift, pelvic floor is going to pay the price. And it usually translates to lower back pain. And then running. It's just a captain obvious. Running, jumping, etc. We're putting a pressure and compression into those lower limbs, and that's just going to create this pressure on the pelvic floor. I have a lot of runners. I actually work with runners all the time. Running is fine. Cross training for your running is optimal. And knowing how to align and breathe, not only while you're cross training, but also while you're running, can be a game changer and can really help your speed, can help take some of the pressure and impact force off of your lower limbs. So it's about knowing how to translate this stuff into what you need to know for your body. And I talk with my hands a lot, right? I don't. All right, so when can I do XYZ again? When can I run again? When can I lift again? When can I jump on the trampoline again? When can I go hiking for 10 miles again? I get it all. Well, we want to look at a couple of things. What is the tension in your linea alba? Is it responding to the work? We want it to be increasing in tension to pull the rectus abdominis back together. Can you do an activity without your belly bulging? If all of a sudden you get a dome or your belly just pops in that dome fashion, the body's saying, I cannot do this yet. Maybe later with some good progressive training, but not right now. And then pelvic pain or pressure. If something gives you pelvic pain or pressure, why are you doing it? I'm just going to be forthright. If it's giving you pelvic pain or pressure, then it's not for your body at this time. We have to modify and work around it. And again, these are things I teach in this course in depth so that you can figure out how to get back to those activities you love again. And then obviously with pelvic pain and pressure can sometimes come leaking. So for instance, sometimes in Pilates with rolling like a ball, I have people say, I cannot control my pelvic floor and rolling like a ball. I'm either leaking urine or I'm passing gas or one of those things. So take it back to rocking chair, because rocking chair teaches you how to breathe well. It helps your body align better. It takes some congestion out of your abdomen that isn't quite ready for that increase in pressure. And as you get stronger and stronger in that exercise, you can go back to rolling like a ball. That's just one example of 100. Moving on. So what are some core and pelvic floor safe exercises? Glute bridges are one of my favorites. Bridge all the time. Now, you might want to fill out your pelvic health screening to figure out which bridge is better for you, the exhale on the way up or the exhale on the way down. But listen, here's the thing. I'm a facilitator. You are in your body, and your body is actually very wise and is very, very willing to communicate with you. So try both. See which one feels more connected. That's the one that maybe you should work with for now. Also, squatting is actually good for your core and pelvic floor. It goes back to those glutes. We need the glutes to support the pelvic floor. Clamshells, even though if one more physical therapist just says, go home and do 50 clamshells, everything will be fine. Wrong, wrong, and wrong. They're just part of it. And actually, there are more effective exercises than clamshells to do. But if you're not familiar with those exercises, clamshells are one of the safest exercises you can do where you don't have to worry about if you're tweaking the wrong muscle. You can do heel slides, split squats, supine dynamic hamstring stretches, banded rear flies. If you're like, I have no idea what any of these things are, I teach you all of this in Core Restore 2.0 and in Core Restore the original. All of these exercises are in there, plus some. Core Restore has almost, I think it's like 250 exercises in it by the time the 12 levels are over, and they work progressively. So if you do Core Restore, you go through these 12 videos, and you just progress through what is your control exercises in weeks 1, 2, 3 become your warm-up exercises just a few weeks later. So it can really become almost a full body workout by the time you get to weeks 9, 10, 11, and 12. But first you set the foundation the first few weeks. Core Restore 2.0 is going to work the same way. The workouts are going to be set up differently, but they're going to be shorter. They're going to be 20 minutes. You're going to get 2 workouts per week. And those also are going to progress through all new exercises or variations of exercises like this that we now have better research on or better modifications for. All right, so the question is, are you ready to feel better? If you're here tonight, I'm assuming you probably want to feel better or you have some kind of question. There's something in you that's like, I need to know more about my core, my pelvic floor, something still feels off, something still feels like pain or pressure, and you're ready to move better. So that is where I like to say you're ready to come home to yourself, because actually your body wants to feel good. Your body wants to move better. Your body knows how to breathe well. So it's shedding all of these things that are causing restriction and tension and stress and even dysfunction, and bringing them back into a balance so that you can feel confident in your own skin. All right, so moving on to this, I am going to give you some time for some questions. I'll talk more about this in just a second with Core Restore 2.0 because it is a 12-phase program. It does these things. But before that, does anybody have any questions? No? Hey, look at that. Fireworks. Okay, so cool. 12-phase program here. We're going to hop right in. Let me move back over there. So more ease in your body. It is a 12-phase program. People who've gone through Core Restore and who have done their homework and have done it well have all had amazing results with Core Restore. Core Restore 2.0 is a bigger version with more included. It's going to teach you how to trust in your body. It's going to help you determine your best exercises for strong core and pelvic floor function. It's going to deliver confidence while you're laughing, running, dancing, because especially my Lake Frederick people, I know there are dance parties and I know you want to move well, okay? And then there's increased vitality in your daily life. The path to creating the active life you desire. That's the number one thing I hear the most is, I want to be able to do this, but I feel like I'm being held back by this. And so that's what I really want to teach people to do in Core Restore 2.0. All right, so let's go on. So the services here, they obviously, you can do a workshop experience with me. Many of you have done workshops with me in the past. I can do assessments for your diastasis. I do postural assessments. There's a core ultrasound that's available. I can refer you out to other providers for things like core ultrasounds and internal examinations. I also have the 30-day core challenge that just wrapped up, but it will be coming back again in the fall. And the Great Glute Challenge is on YouTube for you to access at any time. Then I have Core Restore do it yourself, group, and VIP. All right, so I think actually that about wraps it up for me. Except, okay, I should talk about this. If you do Core Restore 2.0, you are going to need some materials. You can find these on my website. I have put everything into like an Amazon cart or whatever, or there's a list at the very top for Core Restore. But a thing like a stability ball, a sand ball, your 9-inch fitness ball, tennis ball, and then you have your TheraBand, some small hand weights. A kettlebell is very, very optional. You actually don't need to absolutely have one of those. You can use like a jug of water. And then a pull-up bar is lovely if you have one, but you don't need one. And then yoga bolster is optional because you can also use couch cushions or thick pillows. Your yoga blanket is optional because you can use, those throw blankets. And then also you want a good mat, and gliders can be optional as well. And then these are just some of the testimonials that you can see. I have people who've had, childbirth, POTS syndrome. Core Restore has helped them immensely. These are some of my like older testimonials, but I actually have a lot of them on Google and on my website. I have a few videos on my website if you want to check them out, of ladies who have done the program just in this year and have said that it's been surpassing anything that they've ever tried before. I have a lot of attention to detail and really like to help people feel better in their body. So there is some of that information out there if you want to check out and not take my word for it. All right, so my goal, the reason why I'm putting all of this out into the universe, is because I want people to be able to release anxiety. I want people to be able to let go of their pain. I want people to feel strong to the core. And most importantly, I do want them to feel like they can come home to yourself. Come home to yourself and feel confident in your movement. Okay. So package options for Core Restore 2.0 if you want to try it out. And this is what it includes. So pay attention and take notes. The do-it-yourself package, you're going to get the 12 progressive phases. What I mean by that is you're going to have those 2 workouts per phase, and you'll alternate between workout A and workout B. The phase 2, you get 2 new workouts to phase 3. So 24 total workouts. You'll also get 60 educational modules. So every phase, I give you 5 educational modules. They're short and sweet. I promise you'll be able to do them over coffee and listen to things about your body so that you understand how to apply this knowledge to your body and be your own best partner in your exercise classes and recreational pursuits. You'll also get meditation. So this is new to Core Restore 2.0, because the one thing I've learned in the past 11 to 12 years of just pelvic floor work and core work is that people need to be able to decrease their stress. People need to be able to change their mindset. If those things aren't dealt with, the pain can often stay and linger. And so I have meditations, and they start at 5 minutes. We work up to 15 minutes, and I do different types of breath practices in every meditation to teach you different tools so that what one person might love and really connect with might not be what the other person really loves and connects with. But that way you have a variety of tools in your toolbox to pull from in meditation to help the breath repattern, to help the vagus nerve settle, and to help the body to heal. I also have a sound bath included in this package, which is a yoga nidra sound bath. So there is a script, actually a meditation, if you will. Yoga nidra means sleep. So you're meant to be just kind of conscious, but basically like in Shavasana, an extended amount of time. And I also do a sound bath with it. And it's specifically for pelvic healing. Of course, the course is yours to keep. So you get to keep it forever and ever and ever and revisit it. And I have lots of Core Restore original people who have gone through Core Restore multiple times to help their body after they've had surgery or they've had something going on. They traveled a lot and they just need to recalibrate. You'll have the same thing with this course. And then you have your VIP options. So you'll get everything the do-it-yourselfers get, you get everything the groupers get, and then you also get 12 personalized sessions with me. They can be virtual or in person. And then you also get that in-depth personalization. So if your body needs to have more information or more personalization, then those are a really great fit for you. All right, so from there, just to reiterate, if you're doing core restore, yes, we're going to have you radiating in all aspects of life, confidence that soars to new heights. You might even get some ignited passion in your libido. I like to call that the bow chicka wow wow. You'll be able to have laughter and fearless jumps, right? No fear of leaking. My favorite part, the tranquil and crystal clear mental state. I love the meditation part. It's going to be my absolute favorite part of Core Restore 2.0. I just know it. Liberation from back discomfort. I've been there, done that. I do my own homework. You can rediscover the body, enhance your bladder, reduce your bathroom visits. All of these things I've seen time and time and time again in all of my clients. So I definitely encourage you, if you've been kind of sitting on it, maybe you've been taking workshops and things with me, but you're like, okay, I just need to like dig in here and get to this. Now is a really great time to do that. All right, so let's get this party started. And there is the link, jamiehaynes.com/core restore. For attending tonight, you do get a coupon code. Your coupon code is RESTORE, just the word restore. And that gives you $100 off any of those packages. But you do have to use it by midnight tomorrow night. So there is a little caveat to that. So there is that going on for you with the coupon code to use that until tomorrow night. I think I covered everything I wanted to cover about Core Restore. But does anyone have any questions for me? Yeah, I think I covered it all. Testimonials?
Jamie,
Yes.
I have a couple questions.
Yes.
So you've got the 12 sessions.
Mhm.
Is it, I'm just trying to understand that are we expected to do these exercises or whatever you want to call them every day for a week? And that's session one. And then session two is every day for a week. Those sessions. Is that what this is, or is it every other day? And how long is it to do them? I'm just trying to
Okay.
figure out timing.
Yeah, timing. So, and that's going to be a little different for every person, but you're going to have the option of workout A and workout B. And workout A and workout B can be alternated. Now, for some people, depending on their fitness level, they might want to do those exercises every single day. But if you're adding the group session, you can actually just let Wednesday be the workout with me, because all of these workouts are only 20 minutes in length. I'm going to be
Okay.
doing a 20-minute workout with you on Wednesday anyway. So you can mark that one off the list. You
Mhm.
can just do Monday and Tuesday, Wednesdays with me. If you're doing VIP sessions, that's also going to be with me. And
Right.
we can do that in person, or we can do that virtually. If it's in person, I most likely will have you on the reformer as well, just to expedite your results, because there's a lot of magic I can do on that thing. So some of the tools I ask you to have at home for Core Restore, we can use in your Zoom sessions, and I can simulate some reformer work and get you some expedited results. So the 12 individual sessions for VIP will be individualized to you specifically, but can count as one of your workouts for the week. I tell folks, try to do, just like Pilates, at least every 48 hours minimum. So if you're only doing every other day, that's still okay. You're still going to get the work and you're still going to get results. I just have some like heave hoers that are like, I'm going to do it every single day. And that's entirely up to them. And that's actually up to your fitness level. If you're somebody that's already really, really active, you're running a lot or you're lifting a lot, these might exercises and workouts might serve to be a great warm up to your workout or a cool down. You can split them up, right? Do the control exercises as a warm up and then do the decompression exercises as your cool down to your already existing workout. Does that make sense? Yeah. And like if you're taking classes and you're like, okay, I know that in this workout this week, I'm supposed to do these exercises. Oh, wait, my goal is doing this. I can go ahead and kind of check this off my list, right? And I can this is my workout, or this is that exercise. Okay, that one's done. Now I can just do these other ones. So you also don't have to follow me in the videos verbatim all the time. If you know what the exercises are for the week and you want to sprinkle them in around classes you're already doing, that's also okay. The whole point is to definitely take what I teach you and start to customize it to what you're trying to accomplish. Whether that's a hike, a run, a certain class that you want to be able to take part in, or a pickleball tournament, whatever it is, you want to be able to do that with confidence. And that's what I'm trying to teach you. Great question, though. Thank you. Anyone else? No? Super quiet. It's a quiet group. All right. I'm going to stop share here for just a moment. So thank you everyone for attending tonight. And I will keep you online here for just a second. I'm going to just stop the recording part. But for those who may be watching a recording later, thank you so much for stopping in. Let me know if you have any questions at hello@jamiehaynes.com.